They say a storm is something you fear, something you run from. But some storms are not meant to destroy, they are meant to change the landscape forever. Joe Ranga is not the kind of storm that arrives with noise alone. He comes with pressure built over years, with winds shaped by struggle, and with thunder born from refusal to quit. Before the storm, there was silence. Days when no one noticed, nights filled with doubt, moments where quitting seemed reasonable. But storms don't ask for permission. They gather strength quietly. Every failure became rain. Every rejection became wind. Every setback became lightning. When Joe Ranga moves, complacency breaks. Excuses fall apart. Weak limits are torn down. His presence reminds the world that strength is not inherited, it is forged. He doesn't wait for perfect conditions. He creates momentum where none exists. A storm doesn't explain itself. It proves itself. And Joe Ranga proves that resilience can roar louder than fear, that discipline can outlast chaos, and that purpose can cut through darkness like lightning across the sky. This storm is not destruction, it is transformation. And once it passes, nothing remains the same. A storm is never sudden. What looks like an overnight explosion is actually the result of pressure accumulating over time. Long before the thunder is heard, the storm is forming quietly, layer by layer, moment by moment. In the same way, Joe Ranga was not created in one powerful instant. He was built. Every challenge added weight. Every failure increased pressure. Every uncomfortable moment sharpened resolve. While others looked for shortcuts or instant recognition, Joe Ranga was absorbing the grind. Storms don't announce their arrival while forming, they strengthen in silence. That silence is where discipline is learned, where patience is tested, and where identity is forged. Being built means enduring what others avoid. It means standing in uncertainty without guarantees. It means continuing when motivation fades and applause is absent. Joe Ranga's strength did not come from talent alone. It came from repetition, sacrifice, and consistency when quitting would have been easier. Natural storms gain power from friction in the atmosphere. Human storms gain power from resistance in life. Every obstacle became resistance, and resistance became fuel. Instead of breaking under pressure, Joe Ranga adapted, evolved, and hardened. Pressure didn't crush him, it shaped him. People often admire strength without understanding its cost. They see the force but not the formation. They see the storm but not the years of tension behind it. Joe Ranga represents the truth that greatness is engineered through endurance, not luck. Storms are not accidents. They are outcomes of relentless buildup, unwavering commitment, and the refusal to remain ordinary. Before every powerful storm, there is an eerie calm. The sky looks ordinary. The air feels still. Most people assume nothing is coming. This silence is not weakness, it is preparation. Joe Ranga's journey followed the same pattern. Long before his impact was felt, he moved through seasons where no one was watching, no one was applauding, and no one was expecting anything extraordinary. In those quiet phases, progress didn't disappear, it went underground. While others measured success by visibility, Joe Ranga measured it by growth. The silence became a training ground where focus deepened and self-reliance was forged. There was no external validation to lean on, only inner discipline to keep moving forward. Silence tests commitment. When results are invisible, belief becomes the only fuel. Joe Ranga learned to trust the process without guarantees. Every early morning, every lonely decision, every unnoticed effort added to the pressure building beneath the surface. The absence of attention sharpened hunger instead of weakening it. Many people mistake silence for stagnation. They assume that if something isn't loud, it isn't powerful. But the most dangerous storms form quietly. Joe Ranga understood that impact does not require announcement. True force reveals itself only when it is ready. In the quiet, character was shaped. Doubt tried to creep in, but silence forced confrontation with fear rather than escape from it. Without distractions, excuses had nowhere to hide. What remained was clarity, clarity of purpose, direction, and resolve. The silence did not delay the storm, it prepared it. Failure is often treated like an ending, but in reality, it is raw material. For Joe Ranga, failure was never a signal to stop, it was a signal to refine. Every missed opportunity, every wrong turn, every moment that didn't go as planned added substance to his strength instead of subtracting from it. Most people fear failure because it exposes weakness. Joe Ranga used failure to expose truth about limits, habits, and blind spots. Each setback forced adjustment. Each loss demanded accountability. Instead of denying mistakes, he studied them. Failure became a mirror, showing exactly what needed to be improved. Strength does not come from constant winning. It comes from surviving loss without surrender. Every time failure appeared, it tested resilience. Quitting was always an option, but choosing to continue made the next step heavier, sharper, and more intentional. With every recovery, endurance deepened. Just as storms draw energy from unstable conditions, Joe Ranga drew power from unstable moments. Chaos didn't confuse him, it conditioned him. The weight of failure built mental toughness, emotional control, and strategic patience. Pain became a teacher rather than a wound. Failure also stripped away illusions. It removed ego and replaced it with discipline. It taught humility without weakening confidence. Each fall reinforced the understanding that progress is not linear, and strength is not fragile. Failure didn't slow the storm, it fed it. Perfection waits. Momentum moves. Joe Ranga understood early that waiting for the perfect moment is one of the most subtle forms of fear. Conditions are never ideal, timing is never flawless, and clarity rarely arrives before action. While others hesitated, planning endlessly, doubting endlessly, he chose to move. Momentum is built through imperfect steps taken consistently. Joe Ranga didn't wait until every detail was aligned or every risk eliminated. He acted with what he had, where he was, and adjusted along the way. Each action created energy, and that energy created direction. Movement revealed answers that thinking alone never could. Perfection creates paralysis. Momentum creates progress. Mistakes made while moving taught more than theories formed while standing still. Joe Ranga learned that action sharpens instinct, and repetition builds mastery. Progress came not from flawless execution, but from relentless continuation. Momentum also silences doubt. When motion is constant, fear struggles to keep up. Confidence grows through evidence, and evidence comes from doing. Every small win added force. Every recovery from missteps strengthened belief. Even resistance became part of the acceleration. Like a storm that gathers speed as it moves, Joe Ranga became stronger through forward motion. Stopping would have weakened the force. Moving, even imperfectly, kept the pressure building, the direction clear, and the impact inevitable. At the center of every powerful storm is pressure, and the ability to withstand it. For Joe Ranga, mental toughness was not a trait he was born with. It was a skill developed through repeated exposure to difficulty. When situations became uncomfortable, when outcomes were uncertain, when emotions threatened control, the mind became the battlefield. Mental toughness meant staying steady when motivation disappeared. It meant continuing when energy was low and results were delayed. Joe Ranga trained his mind to function independently of mood, circumstance, or approval. Discipline replaced impulse. Focus replaced distraction. Control replaced reaction. Pressure reveals character. Under stress, weak thinking collapses but strong thinking adapts. Joe Ranga learned to absorb pressure without letting it distort judgment. He separated emotion from decision-making, allowing clarity to exist even in chaos. This inner stability became the anchor that held everything together. Mental toughness also meant enduring isolation. Not everyone understands the path of growth, and not everyone supports it. Joe Ranga accepted solitude as part of development. In that space, self-trust deepened. Doubt didn't vanish, but it no longer dominated. The mind learned to lead rather than follow fear. Storms don't break because of noise outside, they collapse when their core weakens. Joe Ranga protected the core. Through routine, self-control, and relentless inner work, the mind became the strongest structure within the storm. Limits often appear disguised as rules, expectations, or inherited beliefs. They are repeated so often that they begin to feel permanent. Joe Ranga learned early that most limits are not real barriers, they are agreements people accept without question. Breaking free required challenging what was considered normal, safe, or realistic. Every time someone said, "This is as far as you can go," a boundary was drawn. Joe Ranga didn't see those boundaries as warnings, he saw them as invitations. Limits only survive when they are obeyed. The moment action confronts them, they weaken. Resistance exposed how fragile many of these supposed ceilings truly were. Excuses thrive where limits are respected. Joe Ranga refused to give excuses space to grow. Fatigue, doubt, and fear were acknowledged but not allowed to decide outcomes. Each time he pushed past what felt possible, capacity expanded. What once felt extreme became normal through repetition. Collapsing limits also required discomfort. Growth demanded stepping into uncertainty, risking failure, and standing alone at times. Joe Ranga accepted that discomfort was not a signal to retreat, it was evidence of expansion. The body adapted. The mind adapted. The standard rose. Storms don't negotiate with walls, they break through them. In the same way, Joe Ranga didn't try to live within limits that were never meant to hold him. With every boundary crossed, the storm intensified, leaving outdated constraints unable to contain the force being built. True power doesn't always announce itself with words. Sometimes it enters a space quietly and shifts everything without explanation. Joe Ranga's presence carried weight because it was backed by discipline, consistency, and inner certainty. When he showed up, standards rose. Complacency became uncomfortable. Energy changed. Presence is built long before it is felt by others. It comes from alignment between action and intention. Joe Ranga didn't need to demand attention. His focus, posture, and readiness spoke first. People could sense preparation without being told. That silent authority created pressure, not through force but through example. Pressure exposes truth. In the presence of someone who operates with intensity and purpose, excuses feel weak. Half-effort becomes obvious. Joe Ranga's presence challenged others to either elevate or reveal their lack of commitment. Not everyone welcomed that pressure, but it was undeniable. Consistency strengthened that presence. Joe Ranga was the same in difficult moments as he was in easy ones. No performance, no mask, only reliability. That steadiness built credibility, and credibility amplified impact. The pressure wasn't loud, but it was constant. Like the calm center of a storm that influences everything around it, Joe Ranga's presence altered environments. Conversations sharpened. Decisions became serious. Time felt valuable. Presence didn't seek control, it created gravity. When a storm passes, the noise fades, but the evidence stays. The landscape is never exactly the same as it was before. In the same way, Joe Ranga's impact was not measured by moments of intensity alone, but by the changes left behind. Transformation became visible in systems, mindsets, and standards that could not return to their previous state. True impact reshapes foundations. Joe Ranga didn't aim to impress temporarily, he aimed to alter direction permanently. People who crossed paths with him found their perspectives shifted. Comfort zones felt smaller. Old habits felt insufficient. The storm didn't just move through, it redefined what was acceptable. Transformation also required responsibility. Change is not accidental, it demands accountability. Joe Ranga's influence encouraged ownership over outcomes rather than excuses for circumstances. The environment adapted because the expectations changed. What once felt difficult became necessary. After the storm, clarity remains. Weak structures are exposed. Strong ones stand. Joe Ranga's journey revealed what truly mattered. Discipline over desire, commitment over convenience, purpose over comfort. The transformation wasn't dramatic in appearance, but it was permanent in effect. Storms don't linger forever, but their influence endures. What remains after Joe Ranga's storm is a shifted reality, one shaped by pressure, resilience, and uncompromising standards. Intensity can ignite a storm, but discipline is what keeps it alive. Joe Ranga understood that raw energy fades quickly if it isn't structured. Discipline became the system that held everything together when excitement disappeared and pressure increased. It was not about dramatic effort, it was about unbreakable routine. Discipline meant showing up regardless of mood. On days when motivation was high, it guided direction. On days when motivation was absent, it carried the weight alone. Joe Ranga did not rely on inspiration to move forward. He relied on standards. Those standards removed negotiation from effort and replaced it with certainty. Consistency turned discipline into identity. Repeated actions shaped habits, and habits shaped outcomes. What others saw as extreme commitment became normal through repetition. Discipline eliminated chaos by creating order, even in unstable conditions. The storm stayed controlled, focused, and relentless. Discipline also protected momentum. It prevented regression during setbacks and arrogance during success. By staying committed to process rather than emotion, Joe Ranga ensured that progress was sustainable. Short-term comfort was sacrificed for long-term strength. Storms weaken when structure collapses. Joe Ranga reinforced the structure daily, through self-control, precision, and responsibility, ensuring that the force he built could endure pressure without losing direction. A storm without direction is chaos. Joe Ranga understood that raw power alone is not enough. Without a clear vision, force disperses and impact is lost. Vision became the compass that guided every action, every decision, and every effort, ensuring that energy was focused where it mattered most. Vision is born from clarity of purpose. Joe Ranga identified what he wanted to achieve long before results were visible. That clarity allowed him to navigate uncertainty with confidence, knowing which risks were worth taking and which distractions could be ignored. Vision gave meaning to struggle and direction to pressure. A strong vision also inspires persistence. When obstacles appeared, when failure knocked, and when resistance threatened to derail progress, vision kept the storm moving forward. It reminded Joe Ranga that temporary setbacks were part of a larger trajectory, and that momentum toward a meaningful goal was more important than comfort or ease. Vision unifies effort. Each action, no matter how small, contributed to a larger picture. Without a guiding purpose, hard work becomes scattered. With vision, it becomes unstoppable. Joe Ranga's vision turned chaos into strategy, intensity into focus, and energy into transformation. A storm without direction may be feared, but a storm with vision commands respect. Joe Ranga's force was not only powerful, it was intentional. Every movement, every decision, and every surge of strength aligned with the outcome he sought. Vision transformed raw potential into real impact. No storm moves in a straight line. It changes direction, shifts intensity, and adapts to obstacles in its path. Joe Ranga understood that rigidity is the enemy of progress. To sustain momentum and maximize impact, he learned to adapt continuously, to bend without breaking, to pivot without losing focus, and to transform challenges into opportunities. Adaptability begins with awareness. Joe Ranga studied his environment, observed patterns, and anticipated resistance. He did not react impulsively to change. He analyzed, adjusted, and executed with precision. Every unexpected twist became a chance to strengthen strategy rather than a threat to success. Flexibility also requires courage. It means letting go of assumptions, abandoning outdated methods, and embracing uncertainty. Joe Ranga accepted that failure and unpredictability are constants in life, and that only those willing to adjust could thrive in the storm's chaos. Adaptability allowed him to turn obstacles into stepping stones. Being adaptable does not mean being directionless. Joe Ranga maintained his core purpose while remaining fluid in tactics. He understood that movement and evolution are more powerful than stubborn persistence in an unsuitable approach. This dynamic approach kept the storm alive, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Adaptability also amplifies resilience. When conditions shift unexpectedly, the storm gains new energy from the ability to adjust. Joe Ranga's capacity to evolve ensured that pressure became opportunity, resistance became fuel, and every curve in the path strengthened the force he was building. A storm doesn't exist in isolation, it touches everything in its path. Joe Ranga understood that true impact is measured not only by personal achievements but by how one shapes the world around them. Influence becomes a multiplier, expanding the force of effort far beyond the individual, creating ripples that continue long after the initial surge. Influence begins with authenticity. Joe Ranga didn't try to force authority or command attention artificially. His actions, consistency, and results spoke louder than words ever could. People were drawn to his example, inspired by the dedication and intensity he embodied, and motivated to raise their own standards. Mentorship and leadership are natural extensions of influence. Joe Ranga's presence challenged others to confront their limitations and encouraged them to strive for more. His energy became contagious, turning doubt into determination and hesitation into action. The storm didn't just move forward, it brought others along, amplifying its effect exponentially. Influence also shapes culture. By demonstrating resilience, discipline, and vision, Joe Ranga set a standard that redefined what was possible for those around him. Limits were not only broken individually, they were broken collectively. Momentum spread, and environments were transformed as a result. A storm with influence leaves behind more than temporary impact, it cultivates legacy. Joe Ranga's actions ensured that the power he built was not confined to his own journey, but multiplied through the lives he touched, creating an enduring force that reshaped everything it encountered. A storm requires more than energy and force, it requires courage. Joe Ranga understood that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. Every challenge he faced, every boundary he crossed, and every risk he embraced demanded stepping into the unknown with unwavering resolve. Courage fuels initiative. Joe Ranga didn't wait for opportunities to present themselves. He created them, often in situations where others hesitated. Acting boldly meant confronting uncertainty, taking responsibility for outcomes, and accepting that failure was part of the journey. This bravery turned potential energy into unstoppable motion. Courage also sharpens decision-making. In the face of pressure, fear can cloud judgment, creating hesitation or inaction. Joe Ranga trained himself to recognize fear without allowing it to dominate. Each courageous step reinforced confidence, while repeated avoidance would have weakened resolve. The storm gains power from decisive, fearless action. Courage inspires others. When Joe Ranga faced obstacles head-on, it challenged everyone around him to reconsider their own limitations. His willingness to act in adversity created a ripple effect, encouraging people to step beyond comfort zones and embrace risk as a path to growth. Finally, courage transforms vulnerability into strength. Joe Ranga acknowledged the unknown, the uncomfortable, and the risky, but he never allowed them to dictate his path. Fear became fuel rather than a barrier, igniting the storm with purpose, intensity, and unstoppable forward momentum. A storm does not lose its force simply because obstacles arise. Joe Ranga understood that persistence, the refusal to quit, is what transforms pressure into lasting impact. Resistance is inevitable. Challenges, opposition, and setbacks are part of every journey. What separates the ordinary from the extraordinary is the ability to endure, adapt, and continue moving forward no matter the difficulty. Persistence is built through repetition. Joe Ranga didn't rely on single bursts of effort or moments of inspiration. He committed to steady, relentless action, even when progress seemed invisible. Every repeated effort accumulated like energy in the atmosphere, strengthening the storm and ensuring it could overcome the heaviest barriers. Resistance tests commitment. Each challenge that tried to halt his progress became a measure of determination. Joe Ranga treated obstacles as data, analyzing them to find weaknesses, and then applied persistent pressure to break through. The storm doesn't stop at friction, it transforms it into fuel for acceleration. Persistence also requires patience. Progress is rarely immediate, and the impact of consistent effort often takes time to manifest. Joe Ranga's ability to continue without immediate reward allowed him to outlast others who gave up in frustration. This endurance amplified his influence, ensuring that no temporary setback could prevent long-term transformation. By persisting where others faltered, Joe Ranga created momentum that grew stronger with each challenge faced. Resistance became an ally, shaping resilience, sharpening focus, and magnifying the intensity of the storm. A storm's power is not in its size alone, it is in its direction. Joe Ranga understood that focus is the guiding force that channels raw energy into meaningful impact. Without focus, effort dissipates, momentum falters, and potential goes unrealized. The clarity of purpose allowed him to act decisively and avoid distractions that would weaken the force he was building. Focus begins with priorities. Joe Ranga identified what mattered most and devoted his time, energy, and attention to those objectives, ignoring what was irrelevant or superficial. By eliminating noise, he created an environment where every action reinforced his purpose. The storm did not scatter, it surged forward with precision. Focus also demands discipline of thought. It requires controlling impulses, resisting temptation, and training the mind to remain on course even in chaos. Joe Ranga cultivated mental sharpness so that decision-making was swift and accurate, ensuring that every effort counted toward the greater goal. Moreover, focus multiplies effectiveness. Energy applied without direction produces minimal results, but energy applied with clear intent becomes unstoppable. Joe Ranga's concentrated efforts turned small actions into significant impact, compounding over time into a storm capable of transforming landscapes. Focus is a lens through which pressure becomes power. By sharpening attention, refining goals, and eliminating distractions, Joe Ranga ensured that the storm he created was not only powerful but purposeful, striking with precision and leaving lasting change. A storm may bend, twist, and face obstacles, but it does not break, it endures. Joe Ranga understood that resilience is the backbone of lasting strength. It is the ability to recover from setbacks, absorb pressure without shattering, and keep moving forward despite adversity. Without resilience, momentum falters and even the most intense energy dissipates. Resilience begins with perspective. Joe Ranga saw challenges not as permanent barriers, but as opportunities to learn, grow, and adapt. Each setback became a lesson, each failure a chance to improve, and each difficulty a test of endurance. Instead of succumbing to frustration, he converted obstacles into fuel that strengthened the storm within him. Resilience also requires emotional control. The storm of life brings unpredictable circumstances, disappointments, criticisms, and pressures that could destabilize anyone. Joe Ranga trained himself to maintain calm in the eye of chaos, to assess situations with clarity, and to respond with strategy rather than reaction. This inner stability allowed him to withstand forces that would have broken others. Rebuilding after setbacks is another critical element of resilience. Joe Ranga recognized that progress is rarely linear. Each time the storm encountered resistance, he recovered, adjusted, and pressed forward with renewed intensity. The ability to bounce back not only preserved momentum but magnified impact over time. Resilience reinforces strength by making it enduring. The storm gains force not only from its initial energy, but from its capacity to absorb, recover, and continue. Joe Ranga's unyielding resilience ensured that no adversity could diminish the power he had built, allowing him to grow stronger with every challenge faced. A storm may bend, twist, and face obstacles, but it does not break, it endures. Joe Ranga understood that resilience is the backbone of lasting strength. It is the ability to recover from setbacks, absorb pressure without shattering, and keep moving forward despite adversity. Without resilience, momentum falters and even the most intense energy dissipates. Resilience begins with perspective. Joe Ranga saw challenges not as permanent barriers, but as opportunities to learn, grow, and adapt. Each setback became a lesson, each failure a chance to improve, and each difficulty a test of endurance. Instead of succumbing to frustration, he converted obstacles into fuel that strengthened the storm within him. Resilience also requires emotional control. The storm of life brings unpredictable circumstances, disappointments, criticisms, and pressures that could destabilize anyone. Joe Ranga trained himself to maintain calm in the eye of chaos, to assess situations with clarity, and to respond with strategy rather than reaction. This inner stability allowed him to withstand forces that would have broken others. Rebuilding after setbacks is another critical element of resilience. Joe Ranga recognized that progress is rarely linear. Each time the storm encountered resistance, he recovered, adjusted, and pressed forward with renewed intensity. The ability to bounce back not only preserved momentum but magnified impact over time. Resilience reinforces strength by making it enduring. The storm gains force not only from its initial energy, but from its capacity to absorb, recover, and continue. Joe Ranga's unyielding resilience ensured that no adversity could diminish the power he had built, allowing him to grow stronger with every challenge faced. A storm does not wait for permission. It acts, it moves, and it shapes its own path. Joe Ranga understood that initiative is the force that transforms potential into action. Waiting for opportunity, recognition, or perfect conditions slows momentum. True power is unleashed by those who step forward first, take responsibility, and act decisively. Initiative begins with awareness and courage. Joe Ranga constantly scanned his environment, identifying gaps, risks, and opportunities. He didn't wait for someone else to direct him or for circumstances to align. By acting first, he seized control of outcomes rather than allowing events to control him. Each decision reinforced the storm's forward motion. Taking initiative also means embracing accountability. Action without ownership is directionless. Joe Ranga accepted responsibility for both success and failure, using each as a stepping stone for further growth. This proactive approach transformed challenges into progress, while hesitation would have allowed obstacles to solidify. Initiative fuels momentum. Every deliberate action compounds over time, creating force that propels even larger achievements. By consistently moving first, Joe Ranga maintained energy, disrupted complacency, and ensured that resistance could not slow his forward trajectory. Finally, initiative inspires others. When one acts boldly and decisively, it sets a standard, encouraging those around to engage, follow, and elevate their own performance. The storm spreads its influence, not through demand, but through the example of unstoppable action. Joe Ranga demonstrated that moving first is the key to mastering the forces that lie ahead. No storm moves in a straight, predictable path. It twists, bends, and adjusts to every obstacle in its way. Joe Ranga understood that adaptation is not just survival, it is the method by which chaos becomes strength. The world is unpredictable, full of unexpected setbacks, changing circumstances, and shifting pressures. Those who rigidly resist change are broken, but those who adapt harness the turbulence to grow stronger. Adaptation begins with perception. Joe Ranga trained himself to observe patterns, understand nuances, and anticipate the unexpected. By reading situations accurately, he could respond effectively rather than react impulsively. This awareness allowed him to convert obstacles into opportunities, turning what seemed like chaos into a controlled and directed force. Flexibility requires courage and humility. Admitting that a plan may need alteration does not show weakness. It demonstrates intelligence and strategic foresight. Joe Ranga embraced change willingly, understanding that clinging to rigid methods would limit growth. Adaptation allowed him to pivot, innovate, and refine strategies, keeping momentum alive even when conditions shifted drastically. Adaptation also strengthens resilience. Every challenge met with flexibility becomes less of a threat and more of a learning experience. Joe Ranga transformed resistance into fuel by adjusting tactics without losing sight of his ultimate goal. The storm he embodied didn't merely survive disruption, it grew more intense and powerful because of it. Finally, adaptation amplifies impact. By responding intelligently to unpredictable circumstances, Joe Ranga ensured that his actions were always effective, precise, and relevant. The ability to adjust in real time made the storm unstoppable, unpredictable, and ever-evolving, allowing every obstacle to become a catalyst for growth and power. A storm is powerful not just because of its intensity, but because it moves with purpose and direction. Joe Ranga understood that visionary thinking transforms raw energy into lasting impact. It allows one to see beyond immediate obstacles, to anticipate challenges before they arise, and to shape the environment rather than be shaped by it. Vision creates a roadmap for the storm, guiding its force toward meaningful outcomes. Visionary thinking begins with foresight. Joe Ranga cultivated the ability to anticipate opportunities, identify emerging trends, and plan strategically for both short-term and long-term goals. While others reacted to circumstances, he positioned himself ahead of them, ensuring that every decision aligned with a larger purpose. This foresight amplified his effectiveness and multiplied the impact of his actions. Visionary thinking also requires creativity. Joe Ranga didn't limit himself to conventional solutions or predictable approaches. He imagined possibilities that others overlooked and designed strategies that transformed obstacles into pathways. By thinking beyond the immediate, he created leverage that magnified the storm's reach. Moreover, visionary thinking inspires others. People are drawn to leaders who see the big picture, who communicate direction clearly, and who act with confidence in the face of uncertainty. Joe Ranga's vision elevated those around him, creating collective momentum that further intensified the force he generated. Finally, vision turns intensity into transformation. Raw energy can be chaotic and fleeting, but when guided by foresight, strategy, and imagination, it becomes a force that reshapes realities. Joe Ranga demonstrated that seeing beyond the present moment ensures that the storm doesn't merely pass, it leaves an enduring mark on everything it touches. Every storm eventually passes, but its impact can endure when it leaves a legacy. Joe Ranga understood that true power is measured not only by what is accomplished in the moment, but by the lasting influence left behind. Legacy is the mark that remains after intensity fades, the change that persists in systems, people, and environments long after the initial force has moved on. Legacy begins with consistent action. Joe Ranga knew that fleeting effort creates fleeting results. By committing to disciplined routines, intentional decisions, and meaningful contributions, he built a foundation that would continue to influence others even when he was no longer present. The storm's force became embedded in habits, structures, and expectations that outlived the immediate moment. Legacy also requires vision beyond self-interest. Joe Ranga focused not only on personal achievement but on lifting others, reshaping environments, and challenging norms. By inspiring growth, resilience, and courage in those around him, he multiplied the storm's effect, ensuring that the impact extended far beyond his own reach. Furthermore, legacy preserves lessons. Failures, triumphs, strategies, and innovations became guides for others to follow, creating a ripple effect of knowledge, experience, and inspiration. Joe Ranga ensured that the storm carried wisdom as well as power, transforming temporary intensity into permanent influence. Finally, legacy turns action into immortality. While storms eventually dissipate, the changes they create endure. Joe Ranga's commitment, discipline, vision, and influence combined to secure a storm whose effects would shape lives, challenge limits, and redefine possibility long into the future. And so, when we speak of Joe Ranga, we are not speaking of a person who simply moved through life. We are speaking of a force of nature. A storm that was built from struggle, sharpened by silence, fueled by failure, guided by vision, and sustained by discipline. A storm that broke limits, inspired resilience, and left a legacy that will continue long after the winds have passed. Joe Ranga teaches us that true power is not measured by momentary victories, but by the lasting transformation we create in ourselves and the world around us. Let this storm remind us all: pressure can forge greatness, obstacles can ignite strength, and one determined soul can leave an indelible mark on everything it touches.